All right, let's unpack AI governance. You sent over a bunch of articles and reports. It's like you're really trying to wrap your head around what it is and why it matters, right?
Yeah, I'm really interested in what's actually happening on the ground.
Mm.
Like what are different countries actually doing?
Well, it's a hot topic for sure, and for good reason, I mean. AI is everywhere these days,
It
right?
really is, and it's
You-
transforming industries like crazy.
Exactly, and that's kind of the crux of it, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
all this rapid development and adoption, well, we need to figure out how to manage it all,
Yeah, for sure. We need some guardrails.
right? And that's where AI governance comes in.
Exactly. It's essentially a framework, a set of rules, guidelines, to make sure AI is developed and used responsibly.
Ethically, too, right?
Of course, ethically
From
too.
what you shared, it seems like you're especially interested in how different countries are tackling this. One example that really stood out to us was Singapore. They're using robots in elderly care facilities.
Oh, yeah, I read that one.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
It is. I mean, they're tackling their aging population head on.
Right, but it also brings up some, I don't know, some pretty big questions, right?
For sure. Like, think about the safety of the patients.
Yeah, and privacy concerns.
Yeah.
And what about the healthcare workers? What happens to them?
All important questions. And it seems like Singapore is trying to figure all that out as they go.
Yeah, they're really on the front lines of this, aren't they?
I'd say so.
One thing that struck me from that Singapore report was that they've set up a whole advisory council on data and AI ethics.
Interesting. So they're trying to get ahead of the curve.
It seems that way.
I know.
Anticipate problems before they pop up.
Smart. I mean, a lot of national AI strategies are taking that approach, actually.
Proactive rather than reactive.
Exactly.
So it's less about, like, hitting the brakes on AI and more about steering it in the right direction.
I like that, steering it in the right direction.
You also send over some articles about what's happening globally. And it seems like everyone's trying to figure out how to govern this on an international level.
It's a global challenge, that's for sure.
One of the most, I don't know, ambitious attempts seems to be this EU AI Act.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
It's like a comprehensive set of rules to regulate those high-risk AI systems across a ton of different sectors.
A lot of people are saying it could set a precedent for the whole world.
Yeah, I can see that.
What I find really interesting is that it's a risk-based approach.
What do you mean?
So it categorizes AI systems according to how much impact they could have.
So higher risk systems, stricter regulations.
Exactly.
So like an AI system used for medical diagnoses, that would
Mhm.
probably be higher risk than, I don't know, an AI that recommends movies.
Exactly. It's a pretty clever way to do it. Focus on the areas that could cause the most harm.
Yeah, but still encouraging innovation in those lower risk areas.
It makes sense to me.
So the EU is taking a bold stance. What about other major players? China, for example.
Well, China's really invested in AI too, and they've been pushing for global cooperation on governance. They're actually calling for a new structure entirely, one that emphasizes multilateralism.
Inclusivity.
Right, inclusivity too.
It seems like they want to make sure developing countries have a seat at the table,
They do, and they've also put out their own ethical guidelines for AI development.
which prioritize.
Human well-being, social fairness, stuff like that.
So we've got the EU and China, both kind of vying for leadership in this space, but also calling for international collaboration. What about the UN? What are they up to?
The UN has this high-level advisory body on AI, bunch of experts from all over the world developing recommendations for global governance.
So finding some common ground.
Exactly, recognizing that AI doesn't stop at borders, right?
It's a global issue.
We got to work together to address the challenges
Hmm.
and harness its potential for everyone.
It's not just about competition then, it's about collaboration.
I think so.
And that collaborative spirit is showing up, even in smaller initiatives all over the place. National strategies, industry codes of conduct.
Right, a lot of different actors involved.
It's a multi-layered approach.
It is, and that's important because
Yeah.
AI governance needs to be tailored to different contexts.
One size doesn't fit all.
Nope.
Okay, we've talked about governments and international organizations, but what about the businesses actually developing this stuff? What's their take?
Well, more and more businesses are realizing that AI governance isn't just about compliance.
It's a business imperative,
Right, because if people don't trust AI, they're not going to use it.
and that could stifle innovation.
For sure.
So companies are starting to take a more proactive approach
They're developing their own frameworks and guidelines.
to make sure they're building and using AI responsibly.
Yeah, and you see a lot of focus on transparency, accountability, fairness.
What does that look like in practice?
One of the reports you sent talked about data governance. It's crucial in AI because AI systems are only as good as the data they're trained on, right?
Right.
So companies are paying a lot more attention to how they collect, store, and use data in an ethical and responsible way, of course.
Making sure that data is accurate and unbiased.
Exactly.
What about the AI models themselves? How are companies making sure those are developed responsibly?
Well, there's this growing awareness of bias and unintended
Like
consequences.
you didn't anticipate.
Exactly. So companies are implementing all these procedures to evaluate their models.
Throughout the whole development process.
Yep, from start to finish.
Can you give me an example?
Sure, imagine a company using AI to optimize their supply chain. Now, the AI could be amazing at reducing costs, but what about the downsides?
Like what?
Could it lead to job losses, damage the environment?
These are big questions.
They are, and companies are starting to ask them and build in safeguards to mitigate those risks.
It's not just about the bottom line anymore.
Right, it's about the broader societal impact.
So we're starting to see companies establish AI ethics boards, develop codes of conduct, even experiment with new tools to promote transparency and accountability.
It's a really positive shift.
It sounds like ethical AI isn't just good for society. It's good for business, too.
Exactly. Building trust is essential in the AI age.
Couldn't agree more.
Companies are starting to see that responsible AI practices, they're not just a nice to have, they're essential for success.
Essential.
All right, so we've talked about transparency and accountability.
But what does that actually look like? Are there, like, specific tools and strategies?
One area that's getting a lot of attention is explainability.
Explainability, that's about making AI systems easier for us to understand, right?
Exactly, like how did the AI reach a certain decision?
This reminds me of that article about the UK Parliament report. They were really emphasizing the importance of being able to challenge AI decisions.
Especially in high-stakes areas like
Right.
healthcare and finance.
Absolutely. Imagine applying for a loan and getting rejected by an algorithm.
Yeah.
You'd want to know why, right?
Of course, and you'd want the chance to challenge that decision.
Especially if it felt unfair.
Exactly.
And if we don't understand how an AI made a decision, it's hard to trust it.
Absolutely. That's why there's so much research going on into developing techniques to provide insights into how these complex systems work.
Like AI detectives.
Exactly, helping us see what the AI is focusing on when making a decision.
So we can spot biases or errors.
All right.
It's like shining a light on the inner workings.
And it seems like this focus on explainability is gaining traction.
That's good, right?
It's a good sign. Shows that people are getting it. We need transparency and accountability. It's not just about building AI systems that work. It's about building AI systems that we understand and trust.
So explainability is one tool in the AI governance toolbox. What else are we seeing?
Well, there's also a lot of talk about audit trails.
Audit trails.
Yeah, it's like a detailed record
Yeah,
of how an AI system was developed, trained, and used.
like a paper trail.
Yeah, so we can trace back decisions, identify problems.
Hold people accountable.
Exactly, make sure there are consequences.
So it's about building transparency and accountability into the system
From the very beginning.
right from the start.
And it's a really important step in building trust.
Makes sense to me. So ultimately, building trust is what this is all about.
You got it. We can have all the rules and regulations in the world, but if people don't trust AI, it's not going to work.
It'll hold us back.
Exactly. We'll miss out on all the potential benefits.
And that would be a shame because AI has the potential to help us with some really big challenges,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. Climate change, healthcare, education.
The possibilities are huge.
They are. And that's why AI governance is so crucial. It's about making sure we use this power for good in a way that benefits everyone.
And that's a great segue because you've got a whole bunch more to tell us about the global landscape of AI governance.
I do. We've only just scratched the surface.
Well, let's keep diving then.
Absolutely. What's so interesting is that there's no one way to do AI governance. We're seeing all kinds of approaches, from those comprehensive regulations like the EU's AI Act to, more voluntary codes of conduct.
It's kind of a mixed bag right now.
It is, yeah. Which
Yeah.
makes sense because AI governance is still pretty new,
It's evolving,
rapidly, and there's just no one solution that fits every situation.
right? Different countries, different priorities, different concerns. One of the reports you sent, the UN System White Paper, it brought up this idea of an equity gap in AI.
Oh, yeah, that's an important one.
What does that actually mean?
Basically, it means that the benefits of AI aren't being shared equally. Right now, it's a small group of stakeholders that are getting most of the economic rewards.
Who are we talking about?
Big tech companies, mostly. The ones building the AI models, hardware manufacturers, cloud service providers. And most of these companies are concentrated in a few developed countries.
Which raises some concerns about fairness.
For sure. And access.
So how do we address this equity gap?
The white paper talks about a dual action approach.
Dual action.
Yeah, so on one hand, you've got to address the safety risks of AI. But at the same time, you need to promote its use for sustainable development.
Especially in developing countries.
Exactly. It's about making sure everyone has a chance to benefit.
Not just a select few.
Right.
So it's a two-pronged approach.
Yeah.
Mitigate the risks.
Right.
Maximize the benefits.
Exactly.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk more about transparency and accountability. We touched on these earlier, but you shared that UK Parliament report. That really emphasized being able to challenge AI decisions.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
Why is that so important?
Because people need to be able to question why an AI system made a certain decision.
Especially if that decision affects their lives,
Exactly, and they use the example of AI being used for recruitment.
which is really relevant these days.
It is. I mean, imagine applying for your dream job and getting rejected by an algorithm.
Ouch.
Right. You'd want to know why. And you'd want a chance to challenge that decision.
Especially if you thought it was based on bad data or something.
Exactly.
And it's not just about jobs either.
It's healthcare, loan applications, even criminal justice.
These are high-stakes situations.
They are. And that's why we need those clear mechanisms for individuals to question and contest those decisions.
It's about empowering people
It is. Giving them a voice.
and building public trust,
Right. If people feel like these systems are a black box, they're not going to trust them.
which could hold back progress.
Exactly.
So it's a balancing act.
It is, yeah. Getting those benefits, but addressing concerns about fairness and accountability.
Okay, and speaking of transparency, the UK Parliament report also recommended being upfront about when AI is being used,
Oh, yeah, that's important.
especially when people might not even realize they're dealing with an AI.
Right, like instead of a human.
It's about informed consent.
Exactly.
People should know when algorithms are influencing things. So how do we make that happen?
Well, we could have labeling requirements for AI-powered products and services, kind of like nutrition labels on food.
Interesting.
Or companies could just disclose upfront when they're using AI systems.
Especially in those situations that directly affect individuals.
Right.
So just be transparent.
Yeah.
And that helps build trust.
It does.
And there are also technological solutions that can help.
Like explainability, which we talked about.
Right, making AI systems more interpretable.
But we can also be more transparent about the data used to train these systems.
And how well they perform.
Exactly. Give people more information so they can make informed decisions about whether to interact with these systems.
And that brings us back to human-centered AI.
Yep.
Designing systems with human needs in mind.
It's a fundamental shift in thinking. But it's essential for building trust and making sure AI is developed responsibly.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about transparency and accountability. But one thing I keep wondering is, who's actually providing this oversight? Are we talking AI ethicists, data scientists, regulators?
That's a great question. And honestly, I think it's all of the above.
It's a team effort.
It is, because AI governance needs a lot of different expertise.
Different perspectives, too.
We need ethicists to help us with those tricky moral and societal questions.
Right, and data scientists who really get how these systems work.
Exactly, so they can identify potential risks.
And of course, we need regulators.
To set the rules.
So it's truly interdisciplinary.
It is, and that's what makes it so fascinating, but also challenging.
It makes us think critically about the role of technology in our lives.
And work together to make sure it's used for good.
Okay, I want to switch gears slightly and talk about this concept of interoperability in AI governance. One of the articles mentioned it.
Oh, interesting.
What does that mean?
Basically, it's about making sure that different AI governance frameworks can work together.
So they're not all operating in silos.
Exactly, because AI is a global thing. And if every country makes its own separate rules, it's going to create barriers
To innovation.
and cooperation.
Could you give me an example?
Sure. Imagine a company developing a self-driving car system. That needs to operate in both the EU and the US.
Okay.
Now, if those regions have different data privacy rules
Yeah.
or safety standards, it's going to be a nightmare for that company.
To comply with everything.
Exactly. And that could stifle innovation, slow down progress.
So interoperability is about finding ways to harmonize those different approaches.
Right.
So AI systems and data can flow more easily.
While still maintaining safety and ethical standards.
It sounds challenging.
It is,
Right.
but essential.
Is anyone actually working on this?
Yeah, organizations like the OECD and the IE, they're developing international standards and best practices.
Trying to get everyone on the same page.
Exactly.
And there's also this movement towards open source AI governance tools.
Which can be adapted by different stakeholders.
So it's a work in progress.
It is, but there's definitely growing recognition that interoperability is key.
Okay, so we've talked about global initiatives, interoperability, sector-specific approaches. But what about other interesting developments around the world? Anything catch your eye?
One that stood out was the ASEAN Guide on AI Governance and Ethics,
ASEAN, that's...
the Association of Southeast Asian Nations.
Right.
It's basically a set of guidelines for promoting responsible AI in the region.
Pretty comprehensive.
It covers everything,
Mhm.
from data governance to algorithm accountability, even human oversight and building trust.
It sounds pretty forward-thinking.
It is, especially with AI adoption growing so quickly in Southeast Asia.
It's like they're creating a regional blueprint.
I like that, a regional blueprint.
Any other notable national or regional approaches?
The UK's approach is pretty interesting, too. They set up an AI Safety Institute.
What's that?
It's an independent body that provides oversight of AI development and use.
So kind of similar to the EU?
Kinda, but the UK seems to be taking a more pro-innovation approach.
Trying to balance those regulations with a thriving AI industry.
Exactly. It's a tough balance.
Yeah. You want to encourage innovation, but also make sure AI is used responsibly.
It's a challenge every country is facing. There's no easy answer.
So we've got the EU with its AI Act,
Yeah.
China pushing for global cooperation, the UK focusing on safety, Southeast Asia with its regional collaboration. Are there any other sectors where we're seeing interesting stuff happening?
The insurance sector is a big one.
Insurance, how so?
They're using AI for all sorts of things: underwriting, claims processing, fraud detection,
Just like every other industry.
pretty much. And of course, with that comes the need for governance.
Makes sense.
In Europe, they've actually developed AI governance principles specifically for insurance.
Really?
Yeah, the European Insurance and Occupational Pensions Authority. They call it EIOPA for short.
Itchy.
And these principles focus on fairness, transparency, and accountability.
Protecting consumers.
Exactly.
So different sectors need different approaches.
They do, because the risks and challenges are different.
It's not one size fits all. This is a lot to take in. We've covered global initiatives, regional collaborations, sector-specific guidelines, and all those fundamental principles of responsible AI development.
We have. It's a lot. But it just shows how complex and multifaceted AI governance really is.
It's constantly evolving, too.
It is, which means we all need to stay informed and engaged.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about what's happening right now with AI governance, but you sent over some articles that look ahead, too, like what's the future of all this?
That's a big question, isn't it?
There seems to be a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah, there is, but also a lot of excitement.
So, challenge and opportunity.
Exactly. And one thing's for sure. Our approach to governance has to be flexible.
Because AI is evolving so quickly.
It is. We can't just set some rules and call it a day.
Things change too fast.
They do. What we know about AI is constantly changing. New technologies pop up all the time.
New ethical dilemmas, too.
Exactly. New risks.
Yeah.
So we got to be ready to adapt.
It's like sailing in uncharted waters,
I like that.
constantly adjusting course.
Which means we need research and collaboration. Absolutely. We need to understand those long-term implications of AI.
And find solutions that are both innovative and responsible.
Right. It's not just about reacting to problems.
It's about shaping the future.
Exactly. And that means thinking about the world we want to create with AI.
It's a big question.
It is, but an important one.
What are our values? What are our goals?
And how can we use AI to achieve them?
And of course, there's the equity issue we talked about.
The equity gap.
We don't want AI to make inequality worse.
No, absolutely not. We need to make sure everyone benefits.
Regardless of their background.
Exactly. Everyone should have access to those opportunities.
I need education, training, digital literacy.
I need policies that support inclusive innovation.
So the AI revolution lifts everyone up.
Everyone, not just a select few.
And, there's a real chance here to use AI to make a more just world.
I think so, too. I mean, AI can help us with poverty, hunger, healthcare, education.
Some of the biggest challenges we face. One of the articles even talked about using AI for sustainable development.
Oh, yeah, especially in developing countries.
It can revolutionize things.
Agriculture, energy, even disaster response.
So much potential.
There is. But we need to make sure it's used in a way that aligns with our values.
And that's where governance comes in.
Exactly, setting those guardrails, establishing ethical boundaries
Steering AI in the right direction.
for the benefit of humanity.
So it's not just about mitigating risks.
It's about maximizing potential,
Finding that balance between innovation and responsibility.
progress, and ethics.
It's a tough challenge.
It is, but we need to have those conversations.
Between policymakers, researchers, industry leaders,
Everyone, even civil society organizations.
we need to collaborate.
share knowledge, perspectives, be willing to adapt as we learn more.
Foster that culture of responsible innovation.
I love that, a culture of responsible innovation.
So what can our listeners do to get involved?
First of all, stay informed. Read articles, listen to podcasts like this one.
Engage in conversations
Exactly. Make it a topic people feel comfortable talking about.
and speak up.
Share your thoughts with your elected officials. Support organizations that are promoting responsible AI. Hold companies accountable.
Use your voice. Make choices that shape the direction of this technology.
And remember, you don't need to be a tech expert. Everyone has a stake in this.
It affects all of us.
Every perspective is valuable.
Okay, before we wrap up, I want to go back to something you said earlier about how fast AI is developing.
It can feel overwhelming sometimes, can't it?
It does. It's hard to keep up.
It is, but we're still in control. We create the algorithms, we design the systems, we decide how AI is used.
We have the power.
We do.
So it's not about being overtaken by technology.
It's about using it wisely, ethically.
That's a good message.
It's empowering. We have agency. We can shape the future.
And on that note, any final thoughts?
Just this. AI governance is everyone's responsibility.
It's not just for the experts.
It affects us all. We all have a role to play.
Well said. This has been a fascinating conversation. Thanks for joining us.
It was my pleasure.
And to our listeners, thanks for diving deep with us. We hope you found this informative and thought-provoking. Keep learning, keep questioning, keep engaging. Until next time.